everybody. Welcome to another episode of Becoming Abraham, where, as I always say, somebody has to be the first. So as always, you can listen and watch the podcast on all streaming platforms, as well as YouTube. Go to our website, divemedia.co. Just getting all the housekeeping stuff out the way. Definitely give us 5-star ratings on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please click down below, click that thumbs up, give us a subscribe. So I have the wonderful pleasure of sitting with some wonderful people. Today, we're gonna have a little quick conversation today about being the first in some very specific situations. This is my wonderful friend, brother, son of God here, Dale Skinner, and his beautiful bride, Rel Skinner. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves to everybody?
My name is Dale Skinner. Me and my wife, we also have a podcast as well about this love. Amadi has actually kind of helped a lot of the stuff that we talk about on our podcast. Amadi has him and his wife have kind of counseled us over the years. I met Amadi in 2010. And that's kind of how our relationship began.
My name is Charel. I'm Dale's wife, and we do host the About This Love podcast together. We've been doing that on
and off.
2017.
That's 17, I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
This brother lost a decade somewhere in there.
Hey, it's like, what was I doing? I was still in high school in 2007. But yeah, and so I met Amadi through Dale, and we've been, like he said, been walking this thing out. And so it's really, him and his wife inspired us to walk in marriage, walk in love, and really seek God's love.
Yeah, they've been an inspiration. I'll put all the information about this love in the show notes. So please go and support what Dale and Charel are doing. I'm an old fogey, so what they're doing is way past what I'm doing. Their stuff is super advanced. They got the clips and everything. So definitely please go and support what they're doing. So we're actually out at a retreat right now. We're up in the mountains in Western Maryland. So we just figured, so we're kind of lounging. Thought this would be a really good opportunity to discuss some things that, we've all talked about over the years. And I've seen some of the episodes that you guys have been doing on your podcast, super inspiring and a great thought. And it's something that Dale and I have actually talked about over the years that I had when we were like, you know what, let's record an episode up here, was in line with being the first, right? And being the first in your family, in your circle of influence, whatever, to take the reins, sort of take the responsibility. As you guys know, for anybody who's listened to our podcast up to this point, as I've told you, following the God of the Bible might not be your cup of tea, but it's mine, right? I've made that choice to follow the God of the Bible. And so with that, there are different responsibilities, different requirements, different things that I'm just gonna have to do, right? Just like with anything. And so one of the things that I know Dale and we've discussed over the years is taking that responsibility of making sure that your voice, right, is the primary voice that your family hears. And God bless anybody who's a church leader or pastors or preachers or anything like that. This is not to denigrate any of them, but it's as a husband, as a father, I want to take the responsibility of making sure that my voice is the primary voice that is heard by my family when it comes to the things of God. That would require me to go read the scriptures, start to get a better understanding of some things biblically so that I can begin to share things with my wife, share things with my kids, do different devotions. So I know you and I had talked about that years ago, and I was like, yeah, Dale, I was encouraging them, do some devotions with your family. Just sit down. And I said, it's going to be weird in the beginning. The first few times you do it, you're going to be like,
I hate to pass
right. You pass a little bucket around your house, right, to get offered. But after a while, it will become normal. So talk a little bit about that. How has that been? And then from a wife's perspective, how has it been like listening when you hear your husband like talking about biblical things or talking about God, and you're just like this is my husband, but like he's talking about like God stuff too. So this is like a different version of my husband. How has that been for you guys?
It's been an adjustment. How long have we been doing this now? Like almost 2 years? Close to
2 years?
Close to 2 or no?
So yeah, about 2 years because we got the one Bible study book.
Oh yeah,
that kids study book. And I think after you had told him, he was like, you know what, Amadi's been saying that I need to do this, and so you just was like, hey, we doing it.
The kids look forward to it now as well. And it's funny because during devotions, like we'll have like somebody say a prayer and we're like, hey, like read scripture, hey, come here, everybody clap their hands. So it's kind of like get them engaged, and they look forward to it, and then they'll take over, hey, clap for Jesus. I'm like, hey, I guys, like y'all doing a little bit too much. Clap for mommy, like like enough. But they look forward to it as well. They look forward to praying. One of the things that I say that I think that it did, especially like for Elijah, is that he's older. I don't think we would have had like this time. Like oftentimes when we do the Bible studies, we kind of have conversations with him as well. Not always bad, because like you said in the past, you don't want every time you say something to your kid to be a voice of discipline. So we kind of praise him at things like yeah, Elijah, like what you do. You know, David did this, Elijah, kind of like how you would do it. You know what I'm saying? But it brought up an opportunity for us to have conversations with our oldest son that we probably wouldn't have outside of doing the Bible study. So that just created another layer for us to have conversations with him about other things as well.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah. And then for me, first thing that popped up in my mind when you said like listening to my husband just kind of minister to us and, doing like daily devotions and things like that, or weekly devotions like we do, I was actually thinking like, I've been waiting for this. Dale and I had this conversation a few weeks ago just about why people get married and, is it for show? Is it just a status symbol? And I said, Dale, when I became intentional with the Lord, my intention to get married to you was really my intentions in marrying you was really because I wanted to serve the Lord with our marriage and put the Lord on display through our marriage. And so that's like to our family, to our friends, to just, I don't know, people passing by on the street or whatever. And maybe that's just a bit like zealous, but it was, I really wanted to serve God in our marriage. So I actually been waiting for when he would step up and would do these things. I longed for it. Now, when it came to like doing it together as a family and more consistently, it's like, oh, that's what I prayed for, but we got to sit at the table and this is what you want to do. And because how Dale did it, it started off in the beginning, it started off as like tea parties. He got us a tea set and got these specialty teas. And so now every time we go to the table, even for dinner, our daughter is like, oh, so are we having Bible study now? And I'm like, we're just eating dinner. So it's been really good. And then you don't realize, like, it started off as like, okay, we just sitting here, like, just listen to him read this book. It was kind of tough,
Also, what you started doing too, which our people, was you started printing out like pictures of whatever we were like. If you were talking about David, you would print out pictures of David or Joseph or King Saul to kind of, for the little kids of color, to kind of help them be engaged as well. So they're like, they're little. So we're talking and they're there, but they're not really there. I do believe that some aspects of their spirit is kind of retain something, but for the most part, they just there like, okay. But they do enjoy it though, to the extent that they understand it, like Elijah does. I know that they don't.
Probably not. Yeah. And that's that's why why I would said before, like, in the beginning there's gonna be some bumps in the road until it becomes normal, right? And it's just like anything you do in the beginning. The first time you do it is kind of like, but after a while it becomes normal, right? In the beginning you need more discipline to just remain consistent, but then as it becomes normal, you do it because it's a part of who you are, as the culture of your family. It's a part, like every family, y'all have a thing that you do, and because it's normal, it's not like you're like, no, we don't do the thing, right? Because we always done the thing, so we just do the thing. And that's for like my wife and I, because our children are older now, right? Now, what I'm seeing some of the benefits of that investment, because like when my kids are in different environments, particularly religious environments where folks are bugging out, like they'll call me sometimes like, Dad, I got invited to church with one of my friends. They was that joke doing this and doing that, and oh my goodness. And you're like, for real? But they're able now to have a filter, and then it's not weird to use your dad as a sounding board, right? As opposed to not knowing who to talk to about this. Something seems off, but you don't know who to talk to about it, because it's not a normal thing for your father to take the responsibility of trying to speak, those things of God into you. So that's like, you guys are kind of in that beginning stage, but like trust me, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train, it is a light.
And sometimes, like, you kind of wonder. You don't wonder, but it's just saying, because we kind of know how we got there. If you look at the history of the church, but you kind of wonder, well, how do we get here when in the beginning Abraham and those fathers, those different men were the ones who told their family about God. Like, how did Joseph's family know about God? Joseph told them about God because he got it from his father. It's like the ultimate God. Well, this the man of God. Like, well, you the man of God too. Right. Your husband, your wife, they are the man of God too. You know what I'm saying? And I do understand that they hold an office or a place of authority, but I think that oftentimes we kind of reduce ourselves to nothing. God can't speak to me because God got the pass over it, and God can only speak to him. It's like, well, that's not biblical. So like this kind of, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but oftentimes I think about things like that.
Well, yeah, I think that sort of the institution has made us as fathers and as husbands almost take a passive role in the development of our children.
Yeah.
Similarly, think about it like when kids go to school, right? Parents got to still ask and follow up with homework. And there are different things that you as the parent still got to do.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you don't, like we homeschooled our children when they're young. I know you guys are just starting that journey. And so there's a more active role you take. But even if your children go to school, you still got to follow up homework, exams, let me see your grades. We just relinquish all of it. And then when they come home with all these Fs, you're like, how'd you get these Fs?
Yeah.
Like, when you weren't checking, you weren't following up the entire school year, right? We relinquish the responsibility to the system, the educational system. And and in many respects, I think that unfortunately, we've done that in a spiritual sense. We've relinquished all of the responsibility as men, as fathers, as husbands for the spiritual growth and development of our family to others. So that's how we get to that point.
Yeah.
You know, I knew guys who would drop their kids off at Sunday school, but they didn't go to church. Or like we know people, my wife and I, we have friends whose kids go to Christian schools, like Christian private schools. Y'all don't go to church. Why are you taking your kids to? So you're relinquishing all of that responsibility to develop your children in many respects. And it's just like, well, then your children will grow up, I think, seeing that person more in terms of, yeah, they represent God more than my own mom or dad. So if it's like a real seriously deep question, I'm not gonna go to my mother and father.
Right.
Because I don't know them in that way, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna go try to find one of these professional ministers, you know what I mean? So it's important, and like I used to tell you years ago, and anyone listening now, when you make these sort of steps, I always say that it's stepping out into the unknown. When you step out into the unknown to do something, whether it's, like I said, just being a voice to your family, there's always that uncertainty, right? Am I doing this right? Are they even getting any of this? Like what you just said, is this a waste of time? There's always those things of doubt. I'm doubting myself. This is stupid. I should have never started this in the first place. And did y'all have to wrestle through any of that in the beginning?
I think you just have to kind of just wrestle through actually doing it and it becoming normal.
Well, I will say I do with the younger ones. I do wrestle with that because, they're so young. So you're like, oh, they're not listening. But then once they start repeating back to you some of the things.
Yeah.
And actually, the funny thing is with that, I kind of also, with Dale taking on speaking into our lives and sharing the Bible with us as a family and not like me individually doing it. And, our oldest son did go to a Christian private school. And it was just like, well, I think, one day he turned to me and he said, well, do you all believe in God?
Wow.
And I'm just like, well, aren't we walking this thing out? But it just has you, it humbled me for sure. And then it has you like turn in and you have to reevaluate. And I even told Dale, I was like, Dale, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Like, is this not aligning with the word? Like, are we living in a way that just doesn't align? So especially with the young ones, I'm like, well, what does our home life look like?
Wow.
So what I started to do was, intentionally watch my words, and not like in a way where it's like fake or curated, but am I speaking life into them when I see the opportunity? Because I feel like we see, am I speaking God? Like we'll see it and be like, oh, I could have said this, or, oh, that was the moment to this and that. Something you actually put on display for us at least when I started to come around, I saw you pray over your son. I think he had a headache. And I was like, what's he doing? It was at like a retreat. And I just seen you was like deep in prayer.
It was like
on the forehead, just like.
I'm always praying for the
like
saints.
Just going in. And I'm just like, oh my God, like he like exorcising demons over there? Like what is happening? I didn't know. And then later you came out and said what you were doing. So you know what, for the younger ones, I started doing that. Like they would fall. I would be like, if I didn't think to pray, I would just be like, well, praise God, he put everything in you to be safe and, to be healthy, healed, and whole. Or if it was like an emotional thing and a bigger breakdown or whatever, you know what? Like, thank you, Lord, for this moment for us to pray. So then I started praying. I actually started doing that with them to the point now where at 4 and 5, they are leading prayers sometimes at night.
And one of the things I said, you remember, we've talked about it on our podcast, but you know as well, but for the viewers, my sister came to live with us last year, and she, left this year from living with us. But one of the things I used, because her kids were involved with the Bible study while they lived with us, and one of the things I used to tell my oldest nephew, because he'd be like, "Well, I don't really believe in God." I said, "That's fine, man." I said, "That's cool. God's not offended by that." But one of the things I said to him, I said, "Listen, man, I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna sound crazy." I said, God won't become real until he becomes real to you. I said, at some point in your life, God will make himself known to you, and then he will become real to you. I said, because I can talk about God, your mom can, auntie can. I said, but until he becomes real to you, it don't really mean nothing anyways.
Right.
And I think what she was saying with our kids is making God real to them, like them actually putting them in a position where they can actually obtain God for themselves.
Right.
And I even tell my oldest son, like, I said, man, sometimes like when he used to go to school, have a hard time, like when you ask the Lord, well, I pray. I'm like, well, that's good. I said, but I'm not gonna always be there, man. Like, I ask the Lord, like at this age, at your young age, start talking to the Lord now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And you can come back and talk to us, and we can walk through some things, and that's fine. I said, but start talking to the Lord. God has to become real to you, because you can't live off my faith and mommy faith. You probably will for a season, but after a while, you live off my faith. He has to become real to you. And I think that's kind of one of my taglines. God won't become real until he becomes real to you.
Right.
Now
that's powerful that your children already can see, I can come to mom and dad with these, but that they already feel comfortable coming to you asking those kinds of questions. Because one of the things as parents we don't realize, our children do have those questions in their head sometimes. They do have those thoughts. It'll cross their minds, and because they don't see their parents in that way, they don't get those opportunities like what you just had with your son. They don't get those opportunities because it's like, I can't talk to mom and dad about this. So I'll just bottle that up, or I'll just push it away and dismiss it, as opposed to being able to have that avenue. Hey, what does seeking the Lord about an issue at school really mean? Like, what is that? You know what I mean? You be able to talk to them and tell them. And again, just as an encouragement to you guys, like my oldest, she'll be 20 next year, and she'll come to me now, and my wife as well, and be like, I'm starting to see some stuff y'all used to talk about. Like literally the most recent occurrence of this, because we used to tell her the same thing when they were younger, like, hey, listen, you're not gonna be able to coast on my faith forever. Like at some point, God has to become real to you. So the most recent occurrence of this, she came to my wife and I recently and was like, I see what y'all was saying about this God stuff has to become real to me. And she was just giving us some examples. She was like, I realized this has to become real to me. And I'm just like, again, she came to me unprovoked. It wasn't like we were already talking. She was just like, hey, mom, y'all got a minute? And we was like, yeah, what's up? I see what y'all was saying all those years. And I'm like, whoa. Okay. But again, because those avenues were already open, right? By me stepping into the unknown, right? And stepping out and being first. Because again, nobody was doing that for me, right? And so I realized early on, okay, I'm gonna have to be the person that I wanted when I was that age, And that's like, it's difficult, but not impossible.
Yeah.
It's difficult, but not impossible. So what would be a word of encouragement that you'd have for people who are at that cusp of, I know something has to get done, but I'm too scared, or I have anxiety of trying to do it? Because, sometimes we'll see something that needs to happen, but you're like, not me though. I ain't doing it. I know it's gotta happen. What would be your encouragement for people that are at that edge and, are struggling to get through that fear or anxiety of stepping out to really start to talk? Because it could be a single mom. It could be single moms out here, like any one of those people. How would you encourage them?
Nike.
Yes,
do it.
You know what's funny?
Just do it.
They're not sponsoring this, but
right. But if you want to, feel free, Nike. Hit
exactly.
Me up.
We could be up here in Nike gear, but I was thinking, do it scared, because you know what? Even when you start to do it, I don't think the fear goes away anyways.
Even when you do a thing, like the fear's still there. It doesn't really go anywhere. I remember when I came to you when I left Amtrak, like I was scared to death. Like I don't even know why, but I was just scared. Like I was like, Lord, what if I go here? I don't like it, Lord. What if the benefits are the same, Lord? What if the pay ain't the same, Lord? Like just the things that you think about. But I mean, I still did it.
Right.
I was just scared while I was doing it.
Right.
But I think like even in your fear, I think about like David and Goliath. Oftentimes, like I think you always say we kind of romanticize or fantasize these stories. But who said that he wasn't scared? He probably was scared to death, but he still did it though, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
No, I would agree. Like just do it scared. But like, and throughout the journey, like you just realize that, yeah, I still have my doubts about this. But like you still have those doubts, you still have those questions, you're still kind of uncertain. So I just feel like, you know, with that uncertainty, are you going to just stop when you know that, well, I'm gonna push forward? And I think more often than not, we just either don't do and then look back and be like, oh, I should have did it. But it's just like, well, why don't we ever have that inclination to do it? Like as we have to just stand here. Because it's almost like, you know, fear, you have that, you either, what is it? The adrenaline will cause you to fight or flight.
Yeah, fight or flight, yes.
Yeah, so then it's almost like, why don't we ever fight the matter? Why do we flee or just, you know, stand in the same place? Listen, that's when you call on the Lord. You don't know how to fight. You call on the Lord to have somebody, well, I guess that's the problem, having somebody else fight for you. But I guess in that sense, you don't have someone fight for you, or you ask the Lord to show you what it's supposed to look like. And so maybe he will send somebody. So to your point, we had like a Amadi and a Shanita to come our way because I didn't know what it looked like. If anything, I didn't really grow up in the church. We grew up in the church parking lot because we would go to church, it'd be a mega church and it's packed. And so, you know, if the outside packed, the inside is packed. And, you know, they wouldn't necessarily turn us away, but it's like, well, we're not going to stand here for like 2 hours, like, you know, just kind of listening. So then we would go home. And that went on for years, where it's like, we'd get all dressed up and go to church. And it's like, we weren't even getting that, you know, that church.
For the first 2 times, I would have went back.
I don't know. I guess it was just like, well, the Lord know my heart, you know, like, well, we'll go at least to the parking lot. We tried.
But hey, I you know.
Like we tried to go to church because I think that was the goal. Like, you know, I think the previous generation, like my grandparents' generation, would be like, well, are you going to church? Okay, good. But it was just like, it wasn't, you know, taking precedence, or you didn't see the fruit of that, or it wasn't evident in our lives. But I guess in their mind, if you went to church or you had a church family or something like that, it meant something to them. But it didn't translate.
Also too, I think like you made a good point. Also too, like just do it, but also just to ask God to bring somebody in your life that can actually show you how to do it as well. I think he's faithful to do that. You know, I think like oftentimes like in the scriptures, it's funny because earlier Destiny had made a comment about for people in her school being religious, because I was like, you know, I met somebody who was recently I met somebody who was a trans Christian, and Destiny was like, yeah, you know, they kind of just culture Christians. I said, Destiny, sometimes I look at it from a different perspective. I said, I think that sometimes they're doing what they're doing and they're saying amen, or I said, but as a part of them that wants God, it's just not visible in the culture that they're currently in. I said, and that becomes the problem. I was like, just because I'm in sin, don't mean I don't want God. I mean, I want God, and I'm in a, even if it's like going to a church that maybe like, when I say God is, I mean Ichabod, meaning the glory of God is not there.
Right.
So it's like, I still want God, but so I'm looking for God in a place where he's not there. I think God is faithful to bring somebody who would actually show you or point you to God.
Right.
If that's your heart. Because I think that's kind of where I feel like God is faithful to do that with most people, is if, you know, but I would caution you, if he brings somebody to you, don't turn away because they're a different background, or they may be a different color, or you may not be able to relate to them naturally. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And do an inventory of your circle, because there's probably people in your circle right now who you be like, yeah, they kind of corny, they kind of lame.
Yeah.
I'm not messing with them. But that's the exact person whom could be the pivot point to turn you to the area where you're fearful or have some anxiety. So that we end off on some about this love energy. How, as a wife, did it change your view of your husband, or how did you see your husband in a new light in this area where he begun to take a responsibility and sort of take a, you know, really an intentional posture towards making sure that his family is, you know, reading the scriptures and becoming more well-versed in biblical and godly things? How did you as a wife, you know, how did your sort of view of your marriage, your husband, how did all that sort of transition for you?
You know, I actually had to be open to receiving it, to like receiving the season that he's in, because, you know, at first, like when it's not happening, you're almost like, okay, well, maybe one day, and it's not that he wasn't reading his Bible, he wasn't in his word, because he'll like come from work and be like, oh yeah, I heard from the Lord. And I'm just like, well, dang, like, why can't we hear from the Lord? Why can't we do it together? Like, I think I had to just kind of shift my expectations of what it's actually supposed to look like. Because like, I used to be like, well, we need to pray together. We need to do, like, we have our own individual Bible study or our own like time where we are seeking the Lord together, but actually being open to receiving that. Like, it's one thing if you want a thing, but like you also have to be open to receiving it. Like, so like I said earlier, I was, I've been wanting this since before we got married. And just walk in leadership specifically for our family. And so, and also I think on a previous podcast episode, we had spoke about that as well, where, I grew up with a single mom. So actually receiving like the father and the husband in him within the home, but specifically like the father-husband part, where he was like fathering me, where I'm just like, dude, why are you talking to me like that? And then he's like, no, I'm not being aggressive, or I'm not, trying to tear you down. I'm just telling you, like, I feel like I hear the Lord about this specific matter as it relates to you, and then we should really pray about it. And so that's been like, we're still kind of walking through that with, some different things in our life. And I'm just like, okay. And then I have to, in my alone time with the Lord, be like, Lord, help me to not be so like closed off from this, because it hadn't happened. I hadn't seen it. And, so I don't know how to receive it, but I don't want to cause I don't want to cause, what would be the word? I don't want to cause dissension, dissension, or just discord in our marriage.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah, thank you, discord. I don't want to cause discord in our marriage if I'm rejecting it.
When you were talking, I was thinking about some of the things going on in my mind. Like, well, when you're a young man in your marriage, you don't actually know how to lead. It's like, that becomes very difficult. And luckily I had you and Dana, but it's like, what if I'd had y'all? Then what? A lot of things that kind of went sideways that you guys were able to kind of come and step in and help mitigate. If y'all wasn't there, what would have happened?
Well, that's why I say, for anybody watching and listening, do an inventory of your circle. That would be my, again, if you follow the God of the Bible, definitely pray and ask God to show you. And then as he's showing you, do an inventory of your circle. Because many, many times, of course, there's going to be exceptions, but in many, many times, there are already people in your circle who you have dismissed.
Yeah, that's true.
I have an example of that. A longtime friend, we've been friends since about 8th grade. Though her parents were very, in my mind, my, preteen, teenage mind, I'm like, so religious. Like, y'all go to church. They were in church every day. They were like, if you would call her on the phone, like you would hear the worship music and the shouting from the what is it called? I can't think of it now. From the sermon, you would also hear the worship music playing, and I'm just like, good night. Did they ever take a break? But when I tell you, like, how many ever years from then later, they're the most like sound people, praying people. So you might think, oh, that's so dogmatic, but I'm just like, and they're Haitian, so they come from a culture of witchcraft.
Right.
They have to be. So when I tell you, like, they were dogmatic because it's like, well, it's either this or that, and I don't want that. I want God.
People dogmatic and being godless. So why not be dogmatic, with the Lord,
But it took me until just now, like getting to this age, to really appreciate them. And mind you, they were in like my arm's reach. They were in my circle vicinity, yeah. And so I just would be like, why are they doing this? Like, what? And it's so crazy because even her being my best friend, I liked her personality, but there's a lot of things that she walked in as a child that I was just like, I pull from now. I'm just like, wow, you did that. And this set the tone for me, that I didn't appreciate that about her back then. If I'm honest, I'd be like, you're being extra. Why are you meeting up with your friends because you have a disagreement? Like, cut them off.
Like, girl, you're doing the most.
Yeah, I used to think it was just over the top. But when I tell you, I look back at that and I'm like so thankful that at least I had that back then. I didn't appreciate it, obviously. But, now I do. And the Lord's like, yeah, like, there you go.
That's great to hear you say. So, for any wives or moms listening, and your husband might be in a similar space where he's doing the beginning stages of, I want to be more of a leader in my home. I want to take more of the responsibility. Be more flexible. Have that latitude. to, okay, this is a little bumpy, this is a little rocky, but let's see where this goes. Let's see where this goes. Even for older children, maybe you're 12, 13, 14, 15, and now your dad wants to talk to you about Bible stuff, and your dad wants to talk to you about God, or your mom wants to talk to you about God, and you're like, yeah, we ain't been doing this for the last 10, 12 years. Like, what are they on right now? What kind of time are they on? That's what the young people say. What kind of time are they on right now?
Right.
Yeah.
Give them the flexibility to be able to walk it out, because it will be bumpy in the beginning. It will be bumpy, but there's a scripture in the Bible in Ecclesiastes in chapter 12 where it says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, because difficult days will come where you will find no pleasure in the days, in the things of God. Things will just get difficult and you will find very little pleasure. And that's why it's important to have these reserves, especially when it gets bumpy in the beginning. So Dale, Charel, thank you guys so much for sharing, man. Really appreciate y'all coming on. Again, everybody, please go and check them out. About This Love on all platforms. Subscribe to their podcast, like their videos. What they're doing is amazing. For anybody who is married, if you want to be married, if you have a desire, if you're in a relationship and maybe it's moving towards marriage, check out the content that they are producing, because it will be extremely beneficial for you and your future. So again, thank you all for listening. And remember, no matter what the surface, no matter what's under the surface, no matter what part of life you're in, no matter what season, somebody always has to be the first. So thank you again for listening. Check out About This Love. This is Becoming Abraham. Thank y'all. Welcome.